Ladies and gentlemen, it is The Sopranos Podcast, Season 5, Episode 9, Better Left Unspoken. Sometimes what happens in here is like taking a shit. That's a quote from our main character, Tony Soprano, in Season 5, Episode 9 of The Sopranos.
I love that was the quote.
It's a fantastic quote, really is.
Sorry, go on. I'm not supposed to interrupt the intro. Please, go ahead.
Well, we're breaking conventions here. That's okay. We're subverting our own narrative on the Sopranos podcast. It's Season 5, Episode 9 of The Sopranos, entitled Unidentified Black Males. This episode is written by Matthew Weiner and Terrence Winter and directed by Tim Van Patten. So clearly they had their C team on this. Those names don't ring out at all. Really something here. This is a hell of an episode. I always remembered this episode very vividly, even after just watching it for the first time. I just thought it was very clever. This device of the scapegoated black men that has permeated the series even up to this point really gets hammered home in a very clever way in this episode. Plus, there's some really exciting plot development here. We really get to the meat of the matter with Tony S. and Tony B. We've been waiting all season for this big info dump, and it's done in a hell of a scene later on in the episode with Melfi. And there's some very fun things going on amidst all of this. I'm Chris D'Amato.
I'm Paul Mancini.
And I'm Jordan Hugh.
And we're excited to break it all down for you. First thoughts and impressions on Unidentified Black Males. This is, in my opinion, the introduction of the final chapter of this season. How'd it go?
I adore the episode, and I find all three plots in this episode to be equally compelling, which is pretty rare. It's not rare that all the plots are good. That's always the case in the show.
The key word there was equally.
Yeah, this episode, at least it felt this way, gave all three of the plots equal time, and all of them have equal weight, and the revelations that come from each really deepen the world of the show and our understanding of it. So I thought the episode was terrific. Certainly one of the best written episodes I've encountered in this series, and I think just one of my favorite overall. The way it escalates, but also how much it reveals and how it reveals is really cool. It's a great episode. And then just going a little bit smaller, I love that we get to kind of zero in on Finn as a character. And because, when you create a show that's this rich and the world is just so real and deep, you can zero in on anybody and they are a fully realized, fleshed out person, and you understand their place in the world. And it's cool when you get to do that with Finn or, Vito, who we learn much more about in this episode. And it's great when we see other narrative things pay off, like, of course, the truth about Tony and Tony's past.
Well said, both of you, as usual. I also adore this episode. Like Chris, I love the image of the scapegoat being brought up and cleverly rendered, the unidentified black males. The black bear comes back, also an unidentified black male, poking around in the backyard. I love that. Another contaminant, like Tony. Like you guys, I love the different stories equally, and some of them you might expect. All right, Carmela, the acting that Edie Falco is going to do is great. Storylines with Tony and Tony B. My favorite therapy scene on the show in recent memory, anyway, happens in this episode. But unexpectedly, I love this storyline with Finn, and a lot of that is because of the actor Will Janowitz, who is just perfect for this role. He's kind of a goofy, douchey guy, but he's not a bad guy. He's more like out of his depth and strange, and has trouble getting his bearings, which is endlessly fun to watch. So I love what it reveals. The characters are all liars, and they're all trying to save face and or protect themselves, protect those around them. So it's vintage Sopranos. It's very well done. It's a long episode. It's right up there, right at about 60 minutes. Does not feel long at all. Flew by. Enjoyed the hell out of it. And at the end, Edie Falco with tears in her eyes made me cry. So it's this very complete experience of this 1 hour, which, as Chris said, is now, as usual, I'd say around episode 9, revving the engine for the last big push. Loved it.
Agreed. And in addition to exploring its own themes and its own devices in the Unidentified Black Males and what all that portends. They also do a great job with masculinity and lies to project certain images of masculinity that get shattered, and we don't really know. We're left kind of not knowing what the result of all that is. Tony was made a robot to his quote pussy ass weakness, and so his image of masculinity has been shattered, and we don't know where that's going to leave him. And Vito's image of masculinity has been shattered, and we don't know what that portends. And Finn, who is much more wishy-washy, makes a decision at the 11th hour that may or may not be good. It's a more traditionally masculine decision, but it's just, I just love when they toy with things like that. And because of its placement in the season, I also like that we're left with a lot more questions than answers, even though many answers were provided in this episode. The war in New York was interesting and high intensity before this episode, but now it's bleeding and it's bled into Jersey in a pretty significant way. So this is going to get way more intense.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, it's good. It's a good episode. I remembered this really one vividly. And yes, when The Sopranos gives one of their quote unquote side characters or smaller characters a moment, they really run with it. And before we really get into breaking down the episode, this actor who plays Finn, I do want to apologize to him if he is out there listening. I actually encountered him in New York City once in the subway, and I have a weird rule where I don't approach anybody in the subway for anything. I don't like approaching strangers. Back when I was
single, a good rule, Chris. That's a good rule.
When I was single, I didn't go up to pretty women. I don't like bother people on the subway. Everyone wants to be left alone in their commute. And I encountered him. He was sitting across from me on the subway, and I was going through in my head because it was a long subway ride and it was a relatively empty car. It wasn't like a jammed rush hour situation. He was just sitting across from me. And in my decision making, am I going to say something because I love this guy and I remember him vividly from The Sopranos and want to say hi? I may have stared a little bit longer than I should. And I definitely think he noticed. And there was a moment where I locked eyes with him and we didn't say anything to each other. And I just feel weird about doing stuff like that. I don't do it often. I'm pretty good about keeping my cool when I meet people, but I feel bad. So if you're out there listening, I apologize for that awkward ride on the L train. Okay, so
I'm sure that was fine, Chris. And I'm sure these actors that are on these huge shows, I mean, they're used to people staring occasionally. It happens. You know what? Everyone who has ever lived in New York City is used to being stared at in some way by someone. So don't worry. I'm sure he was fine.
Well, let's start from the top here. Tony B and Tony S are hanging out in the backyard, watching or listening to baseball. We get our first allusion to quote unquote black guys. First of all, Tony B talking about quote a crazy Rastafuck who was making grilled cheese sandwiches on the radiator, which is somebody told someone on this writing staff about that. That just sounds too authentic to be made up.
Well, particularly between the two pieces of paper, I was like, okay, that's something that's legit there.
Yeah, somebody got a real prison story there. That's
yeah.
Right away with the stereotypes. I loved the carjackers that they hired for Carmine in season 4 because they were like, so they called them right out. That's that's why he chose us. That's some stereotype and shit. And Tony B goes right to it. He picks Irvington, which is a majority black part of New Jersey, neighboring right on the border of Newark. And he says, I was in Irvington. These 2 black guys jumped me. That explains the limp. So we're starting right away with this trope. It's going to come back 1.5 million times this episode. Tony's racist comment, with so many of them locked away making grilled cheese, you'd think there'd be less of them making trouble. You can't not laugh at that, but oh my God.
It gets so much worse this episode.
Yeah, really. Oh no, absolutely. That's kind of the point of it, right? Is they're scapegoating all of their problems and insecurities onto this boogeyman, this other, and they're all just making their own misery. It's great.
And it seems they overdo it, right? Even in the storyline that doesn't directly have the black male scapegoat, it comes up. So you can't bullshit a bullshitter, at least not too often, because the fact that it's so obsequious this particular scapegoat is obviously part of what tips Tony off to Tony be lying to him.
Yep. It takes a lot of balls. It takes a lot of balls to write a script like this and call out these gangsters' own hypocrisy in such a creative, and they really walk a good line here with this. I think it walks that line quite well where, in less deft hands, this storyline could have been a big swing and a miss the way they presented this, but they nailed it.
Absolutely.
Tony's got dinner in the city with Meadow, Finn, and AJ. We find out a little bit here. AJ's summer school, Casa Carmela, maximum security summer. That was a little bit of a rude comment, Meadow, but whatever.
I mean, probably correct.
Why don't you cut your mother a break? Remember those words a little bit later in the episode, folks. She's the one holding this family together. And I don't have to have seen this before to know where this is going. When the waiter comes back, Tony asks for the check and says the young man took care of it. Anyone who's had dinner with a well-to-do Italian father of means who takes you out to a dinner, especially if you're in college, that guy's paying for the bill and you're insulting him. But this is a fun moment, was it not? Tony getting so upset about, like, the look on Meadow's face. She's like about to sip her coffee and the eyes go wide like, oh fuck.
Who directed this episode? Van Patten? It
Patten.
Was him or Jamie Lynn Siegler or them together. Whatever the decision to have that coffee cup mid-sip and her just stopping and dangling there and her eyes going like wide, like, oh no, was perfect. It was so good.
Great moment.
Just mortal terror. Tony's reaction is great. First of all, he says, you're lucky you don't get your head handed to you. The security guard later is lucky he's going to get some head handed to him, by the way. And Tony also says to him, he says, you eat, I pay. When you have your own family, then you can pay. But part of Tony's lack of control here is that he doesn't quite have his family together. So the way that this is all shaking out is great. And it also sets up for Finn that the world that he's in, the benefit is very close to the danger, which is going to permeate throughout this whole episode.
Yeah, this is the first, or I guess among the first instances we see that Finn is out of his depth in this world, and he will try to continue operating as just a nice young man who's a little clueless. But unfortunately, being a nice young man who's a little clueless can really get you pretty fucked up in Sopranoland.
Absolutely. Well said. He slams a wad of cash down on the table. It's not up for debate. He gets up. Meadow looks, just take the money.
I'm not sure how much money he gave him, but it looked like enough to smother the check. Like it looked like enough that like that wouldn't just cover the bill. That was like, it looked like he gave him like $500. It was, what a point he made,
Yeah. I would have paid the tab, left a generous tip, and then taken the extra that was clearly in that stack of cash and hired a handyman to fix my air conditioner, but we'll get there.
Yeah, what the fuck? Yeah.
Props to sound design on this, by the way. Every scene in that apartment had that squeaking, rattling, rat trap, jalopy air conditioning in the background. It was very effective. Anyway, they go outside. Tony, you're a good guy. I respect your trying. He softens a little bit. I didn't mean to bite your head off in there. I used to know where this restaurant was. I forgot, though.
It's in Chelsea, across the street from Chelsea Market.
Oh, yes.
It's I believe it's called the
Old Homestead.
Yeah,
it's one of the best steakhouses in the city. It's
great, and it's for people who are around or they visit the city. Chris, you could remind me, but I think it's like an old steakhouse. It's the old feeling of a classic steakhouse.
Yeah, there's there's three steakhouses in Manhattan, or well, not Manhattan, but in New York City that are like the old school steakhouses. It's Keen's Chop House on 33rd or 32nd Street. It's Peter Luger's, the famous. I think they're in Brooklyn, and it's this one, Old Homestead. And they're wonderful restaurants if you like a steak.
You guys know your food. I'm a little turned on right now.
I'll meet you in the parking lot of a construction site, Jordan. We'll talk.
Yeah, well, I'll show you the area under the bat.
Oh God.
Hey, it's bat night. Sure it is.
Next scene is Carmela and Gabriella Dante gabbing and drinking some wine, discussing the episode. You know, what's really sad about where this all goes is the way they're talking here and the way Carmela is anticipating Tony's arrival. You almost, with the real tragedy of this disintegration, even though maybe in some way Carmela's better off leaving the marriage, right? I mean, I know we discussed last episode that we're rooting for them because that's how drama works. You want the couple to get together.
Right. Yeah.
It's kind of a natural state of things. But there is a brief window in this episode where this maybe could have been salvaged, and it was blown. Carmela's talking excitedly. He was very sweet, actually. She's not going to be saying anything about how sweet he is in short order. I don't know. We'll see. Do you think it means an overture that Tony wants to get back together? I don't know, but she seems like it could be up for discussion. What happened at the party softened her a little bit. However, he drops AJ off and gives a polite wave and a smile, and AJ hands her the money with a kiss on the cheek, which he does not deliver, by the way.
First of all, I would watch this all day.
Yeah.
Like this Real Housewives of North Caldwell, like Carmela and Gabby just talking, and Gabby says, "I'm going to go pee." So funny. It's great. And yeah, I think I like the way you framed that, Chris, that there's this window, but I guess the way that these different characters won't expose themselves to vulnerability or something like that, because at first, as Carmela is almost there, but then once Tony doesn't come in, she says, "That was the last thing I needed."
Yeah.
Right. And Tony will, of course, have his own way to mask these different vulnerabilities. So everybody does it. I think they just do it in different forms.
Yeah. Jordan very astutely in our last coverage of Marco Polo said that Tony left because he didn't want to leave himself vulnerable to what comes after a night of sleeping with somebody in that condition. He just escapes before she even gets up. And that's exactly it. His lack of willingness to be vulnerable and break that veneer he puts up cost him the window. And Carmela being unwilling to be straightforward about what she wants in this moment and be honest with herself. I mean, Gab knows she's full of shit when she says last thing I need was to talk to him, but
sure. Yeah. I mean, the entertainment value in this sort of missed reconciliation is very much in the dramatic irony of it, right? I think we, the viewer, know for certain that Tony would love to get back with Carmela, and we know, at least briefly, Carmela would love to get back with Tony, and it's painful to watch the near miss. But I have to think it's because of, well, it's their pride, right? I mean, she can't really come out and tell him, "I want you back." There's too much of her dignity at stake. I understand. And similarly for him, it's almost too complicated to say the simple thing. It's a great episode for this to be in, because this is so much an episode about hiding the truth until you simply can't any longer. Unfortunately, the conditions change before these two are able to actually say how they feel. I don't know how capable Tony is of expressing perfectly to Carmela how he feels. I think she knows in some way, but it can't be like this for her. You know, he can't be so callous and cavalier about it. That's what got them into this mess in the first place. It's hard to watch.
Yeah. Great scene up here with Johnny Sack. This is a great Vince Curatola episode for me because he shows a lot of range. We know most of the time, and obviously season 4 showed us when pushed on certain issues, he has a temper. Beating somebody in an alleyway, pissing on them. That kind of thing.
Yeah.
But generally speaking, Johnny Sack has been a calm, collected customer, but this little Carmine shit is pushing on him, grating on him. And we get to see some flashes of really scary anger and grief in this episode, which is new for this character. And it's fascinating. Curatola does a good job.
That's a good point, Chris. I hadn't thought of it that way, that we see these different flashes, but it is a great complication for the story. And I love that it's actually similar to what happens with the two Tonys, because like Tony with Tony B, it's a complication of this story that Joey Peets was not just an underling. He was not just Johnny's driver. Johnny, as he said, picked him out of the chorus. Johnny doesn't have sons. He has 2 daughters. Maybe Joey Pepys was kind of like a surrogate son. And there's this real sentiment about it. It's real to Johnny Sack, which means we have to deal with it. It's real to us. What's great about that sentiment and how much he seemed to love this kid and how his feelings about him were like warm and filial. We knew Joey Pepys. He was an icy sociopath.
Yeah.
Like, this guy wasn't like a sweetheart, but to Johnny Sack, he meant something. So this grief and the resultant anger is for real. So I love that. That is The Sopranos to a T.
More great interrupted in the middle of an action acting here too. These choices are not, for folks who don't have any kind of conception about acting, these choices are not arbitrary. There's a million different ways you can deliver any given line. Hi, how are you? Hi, how are you? Hi, how are you? The same words coming out the same way. And then you add not just inflection, but what you're physically doing. So these people, by this point in the series, these are pros. They know these characters inside out and backwards. They know what the characters are going to do probably before even Vince Curatola and James Gandolfini know. So Johnny lighting up a cigarette and delivering that when they go with the cigarette in his mouth before even lighting it, that's just a great, interesting delivery. You know what I mean? Like just little things like that.
It's also very funny.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. When they go.
Yeah. I love Johnny Sack. Truly one of my favorite characters. No complication there. I adore him. Mm-hmm. He is insulted so easily that I just worry for anyone that has to be in any position like this around him. And I mean, we're about to talk about it, but just this lie that Tony puts forward that is so clearly a lie. I'm like, what are you playing with? You're going to end up in the same place as little fucking Carmine if you're not careful. Or I assume where little Carmine will end up, I should say. I actually don't know.
Yep. Great moment of realization here when Johnny says that all they know is some homeless guy nearby saw someone limping away.
Oh, yeah. It's a great moment.
Tony turns.
I don't know how Gandolfini does this. This is a true actor. I actually saw the color drain out of his face when he realizes who it was. Like it's truly like the handkerchief moment. It really like he looked like it was really happening. You know, it's great
because it's simultaneously obvious and not obvious because Johnny can't catch on that Tony caught on, but at the same time, Tony is horrified by the ramifications of this. As he fucking damn well should be.
Yeah.
He passes out, we know he's having an anxiety attack. Is it his heart? It's the sudden changes in weather.
Oh, man. But even that is, so sudden changes in weather, not a thing. I think, this is Johnny Sack. This is a lie he's putting forward to cover for like a powerful man suddenly brought low, right? This is something he's had to say before to cover perhaps Big Carmine's health issues and things like that, right? It can't be known in Sopranoland that Tony Soprano, this guy's fainting on the golf course. This guy's a mess. Johnny Sack has to say something reasonable. That's the weather. That sounds a lot better than he's mentally feeble. He's emotionally insecure about something. He's fainting on the golf course, right?
Yeah.
So again, it's more lies. It's more lies because we can't come out and say what anything is in Sopranoland, right? It's all in the mirror. It's all surrealist, topsy-turvy, code speak bullshit.
And God bless Matt Weiner and Terry Winter for the next line that comes out of one of these guys' mouth. He needs to get some electrolytes in him, which is the absolute first thing somebody who doesn't know what the fuck they're talking about medically would say it in this situation. It's just, it rang true. It was good.
Again, another great little bit here with the writing and the way that it's all put together. Tony didn't like fall and hit his head on something. It doesn't seem like he lost consciousness entirely, but he does not look good. His legs are loose. He's disoriented, and they cut away from the scene before he really calms down. So that's just a very simple edit that adds to the tension, which is great. And then I think we cut to historical changes has come out of war. Yeah. I call this scene Henry V and his advisors.
Oh, good Lord. What is the wardrobe in this scene as well?
So we get a little peek into the Carmine Jr. brain trust here. And
yes, with his belt buckle.
We confirm several things that we had been theorizing up to this point. One, that Rusty is very much the Dick Cheney to Carmine Lupertazzi's W.
Oh, is that what they're doing with the belt buckle? Okay.
Well, At this point, it's not even so much a covert theory. This scene to me confirms it, and for several reasons. One, the belt buckle. Two, the timing. We're 2004. We're right in the midst of the Iraq War and all that entailed. They're talking about pissing on a bee's nest, going to war, historical changes coming out of war, and then he actually drops. This is not veiled. A George W. Bush quote. He said something along the lines of, "But until I'm the president, it's going to be hard for me to verify that I think I'll be more effective." That's a George W. Bush quote.
Oh, directly. Okay. Wow.
Yeah.
It sure sounds like one.
And so yeah, Rusty is Cheney and Angela Grepe. I don't know, Colin Powell. Who's
that sounds reasonable. Sure.
He'll do what's asked of him, but at the same time, he's like, I don't know about this. This is. But either way, yeah.
Dick Cheney also had a lot of problems with his heart, and I guess like Rusty, they seem to make him meaner.
Oh, he's got a quadruple bypass, Rusty. That's right. Okay, that sounds like something Dick Cheney-ish, right? Yeah.
Yeah. So for
Actually,
me,
Dick Cheney has a whole new heart, I think.
Yeah. So this scene shoves that out of the world of theory and into this is a deliberate choice the writers and showrunners made.
Well, yeah, I guess the theory only stretches so far, though, right? Because I mean, Johnny Sack is not fucking Saddam Hussein.
No. They're having fun with it. I don't know that it has any grand consequential.
No, I think it's
allegory.
Just yeah, right.
They're just having fun.
It's to be of its time. Can we say that?
Exactly.
Right?
Yeah. It's the doofus son of a respected elder statesman. That's the gist of it. That's what they wanted to get across, and they pulled some stuff from real life to do it. That's fine. Writers do that shit all the time, and it works for me. Let's just say nothing was said in this room by any of these characters that made me feel like they wouldn't have said that.
Right. It's not really a reach.
Yeah, exactly. The only thing Johnny understands is force. You're a stronger man than your dad was. We'll see. And then we go to someone who is a good man, if not a strong one. Finn and Meadow. Although how good. We'll talk about some of Finn's behavior. I'm excited to get into that. But yeah, so they're here in their shitty New York apartment. Anyone who is right out of this reminded me of some of the places I've lived in New York, just these, especially right out of college. You get out there and your AC doesn't work and it's hot as fuck and you can smell the garbage and hear the cats and the fights and all that outside. And this was just you could fucking feel the heat. They did such a great job. The sweat on their skin, this shit, you can't see what I'm doing, folks listening, but the fanning yourself with the shirt.
Chris has fully stripped naked. I know you can't see it, but he's not wearing a stitch of clothing anymore. It's honestly, it's kind of beautiful.
Yeah. Finn is looking for work. He doesn't want to take a job a minority could have. We could break that line down a million different ways. Yeah, I can get into that, but I'm not going to. We could go out to Jersey and sleep in comfort. The AC sucks. New York City, baby. That's what I wrote. This is New York City in your 20s. This is he's talking about photography. Meadow calls him out. Your thing with models. His photos were solidly unsentimental. Then they get into this shit, which is going to be iterated a million times over the episode. They're young. They're indecisive. Nobody here is to quote George W. Bush, a decider. They are just, what do you want? No, to you. Is that what you want? I don't know. What do you want? That kind of thing. It's annoying, but it's also well written because this shit is, I've heard couples, I've had fights like that are in this vein when it's just, I don't know. This felt real, though it was also irritating deliberately.
It felt real. We'll get, the later fight scene with them as well. I mean, we've had these fights. I've had these fights. This was certainly my experience in my 20s with girlfriends. I never lived in the city, but, cohabitating with someone, talking about your future. Sometimes you don't see eye to eye. You can't tell who should make the decision, if you should make the decision. I'll say something now that I hope doesn't come off as misogynistic. I think I've learned now as an older man, I'm in my late 30s now, that women, maybe people in general, but I'll say women, appreciate when a man can make a hard decision, because then at least we can talk about the decision. But Finn, as a young man, can't even do that. He can't even make half a decision. Women, maybe all people, but I'm going to say women, this is my experience, right? They don't want somebody to leave everything entirely up to them and have no idea and no opinion. It's just it shows weakness to me. That's how I read these scenes. The guy can't even decide what fucking movie to watch. So we'll see him struggle through the episode, and this is a nice prelude to what's going to happen later. I don't think older characters wouldn't have this discussion this way.
Right. And I don't think you're off base there, Jordan. Even in I'll give an example from my own life just to show that I don't think what you said is misogynist at all. I had a dynamic, and I think a lot of couples are going to recognize this, but Lily and I used to waffle and wishy-washy. What do we have? Where are we going for dinner tonight? Oh,
classic,
do we do this?
Classic.
I don't know. I'm up for anything. Yeah, me too. But what do you know? That kind of thing. And I got so annoyed with it just generally in life that I said, you know what? Okay, here's how it's going to go. I'm going to just say what I want to eat for dinner. And we're going to go to this place. And if you have an issue with that place, you bring it up and propose an alternative. Otherwise, we're going to that place.
That's it. And
I'm fine with it. I'm not an asshole. It's not like, no, we're going to the place I said or nothing. It's here's where we're going. Do you have an alternative plan? Great. Let's do that then. But I was sick of being wishy-washy and decisive. And I think something like that comes with age, comes with discussion, comes with maturity. And I do think, and my experience with women has also been the same as well, that making a decision and then acting or at least working through that decision is better than just this, I don't know, what do you want?
Right.
It's annoying. Nobody likes that.
Right. Well, what's funny about this dialogue is that also because they are two folks who are so highly educated and they're so intelligent, right? I mean, the whole episode, the dialogue is like this. It's funny because it's kind of it's the most dressed up version of that. But really, it's just that someone needs to make a decision so we can really have a real conversation, not a conversation about making a decision, which is much worse.
Yeah. They're talking about going out. They're going to go. Is he going to transfer to UCLA? Will Meadow go with him? Are they going to stay out there? The scene leaves up in the air. Fuck it. It's late. It's roasted. We're roasting in here. It's 10:30. We can still get into a movie. They can't even decide on a movie. I did want to say, you want to speak about of the time. Looking in a newspaper for your movie time.
Oh, yeah.
I remember that shit. That is a fucking old school, man.
This is what, 2004? So that's kind of the end of it, man. That's one of the last years where that's happening.
Yeah. Yep. I remember shortly after this, around this time when I was like a senior or so in high school, I started calling the movies theaters to get the times over the phone. And then I think by 2008, smartphones came out and that was that.
Mm-hmm. I remember calling 777 film. And I would listen to the guy rattle off all the movie times. It'd take you half an hour to hear the movie you wanted to hear.
Oh, God. Wow. Life is so much different. It's really astonishing.
And just think, 20 years from now, we won't even have movies. You'll just plug the actors you want to some kind of AI simulator, and you'll get, Lauren Bacall opposite Chris Pratt in a movie about robot dinosaurs. It'd be awesome.
Can't wait. What a future we all have ahead of us.
Yes, it's going to be great.
Somebody kill me.
This is a very interesting scene, this next scene, and it really gets the Carmela thing rolling much faster. Carmela's attorney has recused himself or retired, actually. So she's calling around to find a new attorney. And Jordan, you mentioned this in our private thread that we all kind of discuss things before the podcast.
That's right. The pre-show discussion revealed the revenge of Alan Sappinsley is upon us because you should consult all the major divorce attorneys in your area so they can't represent her, my boy.
Just do it, fella. The revenge, Alan Sappinsley's revenge could be a subtitle for this episode. Holy shit.
I couldn't believe Tony actually took his advice, but lo and behold.
What of course he did, though. It's one of those things that's like shocking but inevitable. And by the way, totally insane cut to the bear in the yard during this. Just right there. What's the bear doing? The bear is claiming his territory, much as Tony will do later on in that yard.
Yeah, and listen, even when you're not looking at it, this thing is still terrorizing you, right? It's still around doing its thing.
It's great. It's good stuff. But this lawyer does a great job of iterating to Carmela without explicitly saying what's been going on. I think you can figure out that move for yourself. And Carmela is this is the straw that broke it for Carmela. You can see her just seething as anyone would. This is dirty play. I understand your frustration. If you'd like, I can recommend a colleague, one your husband hasn't contaminated. So we'll see how that goes. Cut to scene in the back of the Bing. All the guys are shooting the shit. Tony B is there playing cards. I knew this joke was coming before I even... Brains roll over the seat. Joey Peeps couldn't have been too much to clean up. And then, of course, this little interaction between Paulie and Paulie Jr. and little Paulie. Must have shot in Brett tits, must have got silicone everywhere too. Paulie, why you always try and top me? Took the old air out of my punchline, asshole. Just great.
Little Paulie's having a tough week, huh?
Yeah, this is as of this recording, Succession is nearing its end, and there's an article I read every week that's like a weekly power ranking on Succession, and little Paulie dropped about 10 spaces on the Sopranos power ranking this week. Paulie's not having a good time. Anyway, point. Yep.
They framed Tim Van Patten framed Tony B perfectly in the scene, because they're talking about the Joey Peeps thing, and the center of the frame in the shot of the guys playing poker or whatever is actually the guy Jason, apparently suffering from dyslexia. But it's just him and the guys, and Tony B is like in shadow in the far right corner, just calmly listening to them talk about this headstone of a guy that he coldly murdered and not giving a shit. It is great. Mm-hmm. It's so good.
Jersey's going to pick up the headstone. Okay, we're going to come back to that. Tony calls Tony out to the back where Bing business gets settled, mentions the latest rumors about a guy with a limp. Tony B's calm, collected, Long John Silver, maybe. Great line. Tony B, man, not to be fucked with. You said it last week, Paul. You pointed out all the earmarks. This is a cold-blooded killer here.
He is. He's fucked up, man. It's kind of cool.
I'm bending over backwards, trying to stay neutral, paying for fucking car seats, and you're out there acting like a fucking free agent. Total side note, I love Tony's shirt here. I would wear that shirt. Really, really awesome. That black and white shirt with just a little bit of the white on the pocket square. Very cool.
Yeah, that was a cool shirt.
Yeah. And Tony lays into him, acting like you can do whatever the fuck it is you want to do because you went away that night and I didn't. And Tony's response, you're the one keeps bringing that up. I'm fine with it.
Tony B's got his number on that. He knows how much it bothers him.
Well, as we find out in just a moment, he is smart. He is smarter than Tony in a way. Depending on how much I know, IQ is a controversial subject for many, but
we find out Tony B is a genius, but with this IQ number,
is huge.
Yeah, but I've never put much stock in IQ. Does anyone really? Do people really care about that?
So here's the thing that's it. This is the argument really, and without getting into a whole tangent on a different thing, that is here are my 3 points on it. Tony's not wrong. That test is hard. I also think a lot of the questions are nonsense. Who gives a fuck? Not really. But at the same time, the evidence on the other side, the argument on the other side is that there is a correlation to a certain extent, between financial success and IQ number. Generally, that's not an ironclad rule, but like, I guess if you took people who made higher amounts of money and did an IQ test, now what the IQ test measures, who came up with it, there's a whole history there. Not fodder for this podcast, but it is an interesting debate. I personally don't give a fuck about IQ. I'm not a test result guy. To me, it's all be proud of what you do. What can you do? What have you done? What do you do? IQ is meaningless. And in Tony B's case, it's meaningless because, he's a smart and capable guy. But as we've said, he's also a complete sociopathic killer. So,
right. The show seems to want us to care about it a little. Right. I mean, we have seen this guy's smart. But now I guess this is giving us a little something to back that up. But it's interesting because I never really thought about. I never cared really, but it is interesting.
I wonder if it's in part to someone like Tony that it has a certain to Tony S. that it has a certain gravitas. One of the things that's interesting in this scene to me is that it really feels not unlike what happened with Finn. It's much more emotionally charged. But the first thing that happened is that Tony B stepped out of line. So Tony S starts the scene with admonishment, falls into an apology, and ends up conferring gifts and jobs upon this person. So it's a weird thing. And indeed, in the last episode, Tony B asked directly for more responsibility. And now, having gone free agent and done a murder that didn't help Tony S at all, he gets a new job. So it's not a great precedent to set, even as Tony seems to want to justify it with the IQ thing, and even as we struggle with the question of the fact that Tony B is intelligent, is capable. I could see a good future for this casino being run by him.
Mm-hmm. Sure. Yeah, absolutely. Guy like you, brains, balls. If you'd fucking be straight with me, I could use all that. He replies, simply put me in, coach. Great line, great delivery. And Tony gives him the Bloomfield Ave Casino. And he's talking about opening up the books, getting them made. Long overdue. They hug it out, and we'll see. We'll see what happens. Cut to Melfi's office. I feel like it's been a while. These therapy scenes feel like, at least right now, they're coming a little fewer and far between at the moment. But this certainly leads to, as Paul said, one of the best ones in a long time.
Yeah.
Business problem. Tony's talking about putting a valuable piece of manpower to work. Talks about how smart his cousin is, but drops the IQ 158. Do you put a lot of stock in that number? Melfi asks. And they go back and forth. And Tony thinks she's, quote, shitting on the test. Honestly, I think he's smarter than you, the way you keep shitting on the test. But then he drops this information that he slept with Carmela. Poor thing was starved for it, honestly, unquote. I'm the only man she's ever been with. And then reports that he didn't stay the night. Melfi seems to think that may not have been the best decision, but we won't know where this goes because Tony fundamentally doesn't respect Melfi or the work she does for him. Takes a call. This is such a big no-no. It's one thing, maybe, if you have a situation like Tony did in season 3, where it's your busy season at work. Of course, his busy season is illegal gambling and Super Bowl time, but
right.
One thing if you're taking a really important business call, but just like to just take a run-of-the-mill call in the middle of therapy, you got fax machines coming out of your ass. This is rude, and there's a reason it ends the scene. It's just they've hit another dead end.
Yeah.
And Tony's not going to get the warning he needs about the way he treated Carmela with enough time to fix it.
Yeah, no, it's sort of already too late. Yeah.
Carmela meets with her lawyer. Interesting scene here. Carmela is as candid as she can be. I like that she doesn't quote unquote. I find it interesting that she doesn't flat out Tony's illegal source of income. She does not snitch. She does not say, yeah, he's a gangster. There's millions of dollars you're unaware of. But she does express the idea that there's more money than is reflected in the tax returns, and seems pleased when this lawyer gives the story about this forensic accountant who traced a guy who ran vending machines, and we're talking coins. They're able to trace 11 years of income. So Carmela, for a moment, has some hope that maybe she's going to get, and as she says later, equitable percentage of the marital assets. So,
yeah, good luck with that. We've been watching this show too long.
Right. We're back in the apartment, squeaky air conditioning. He's looking for a job. He applied at the movie theater. Meadow tells him, I got you a job working construction. Talk to my dad. It's in Jersey. You'll have to take the PATH train. Not a bad ride, really. PATH train I prefer it to the subway personally, but that's just, again, that's my Jersey bias. I'm biased, everybody. So he's got a job, $20 an hour. Holy shit.
Yeah, again, come on. Even now, that'd be great.
Yeah. And all I've done is help my uncle paint or whatever he said here, but no experience construction laborer. It's just a laborer. Okay. And then we see what this is all about. We go back to the construction site. Man, these guys are absolutely without shame. Just sitting there.
This has gotten worse since No Show.
Yeah. just sitting there on the job site while all these guys work. And it's not only that they're blatantly taking jobs away from men who might need them. It's not only that they're sitting there lazing about like assholes while people build around them. They are also like rude to the construction people. Like the boss, when he calls Finn, "Hey, Detrolio, you need something to do?" Paulie tells him, "Get fucking lost." So it's just, there's definitely humor in it. But like, God, this is just, these guys are absolutely without shame to be able to sit around a bunch of people working, eating donuts, talking sports all day.
Well, I'm reminded what a good metaphor this is. And it's not the first time we've seen it, of course, but just like literally as something is being built, here these guys are as literal parasites, not contributing at all. In fact, hurting the project in some way, and they're built right into the society. It is sadly poetic.
Well said, both of you guys, and it's imagery that we should keep in mind later when Meadow tries to talk about the poverty of the Mezzogiorno as if these guys are working class heroes. It's laughable.
Yeah. Detrolio overhears some baseball talk, gets involved. He is a baseball fan, and he's from California, so naturally he's a Padres fan. He has a fun moment there talking with Vito. You Mets fan? Padres, actually. What does Vito tell him? Stick with the Angels. The Pods haven't had a team in years.
Yeah, Padres haven't had a team in 20 years. And then Finn brings up the World Series in 1998, but of course the Yanks, I think Vito says shut him out in 4, and he was there.
Yeah. Yep. We're going to come back to Vito, Finn, and baseball. Paulie calls him Shaggy. I lost it, fell off my chair.
Perfect.
Get the hose. There's dog shit in the tires. This is a great gag here. Paulie just treating him like, he's the nearest construction, quote unquote, construction worker. Go clean the shit out of him. Like, go before it sets in the treads.
And there's the shit in this episode too.
Every episode, at least one shit thing. It's very interesting.
Yes, Finn is entitled to shit. So that's the first thing that happens. Now, Finn is a little bit goofy and kind of clueless, like when he said in the scene before with the setup, $20 an hour, how's that even possible? But even someone like Finn, who's getting this information and light is dawning on Marblehead slowly, he gets that Paulie who first came up is the real Paulie.
Yeah.
Or he's at least starting to get it, that's the real Paulie. And the guy who came up and said, "Why didn't you tell me you're dating your niece?" is the front.
Right.
Even if Finn is slow to get that, he's getting it enough, in spite of what Meadow's trying to tell him about these guys. He gets it.
Yeah. There's that great cut between, Meadow Soprano, that's her boyfriend, to the cut to Paulie at the truck. There he is.
Yeah, why don't you tell me you date my niece? Gives him a bunch more. Finn just gets handed more cash. Take her somewhere nice. Make sure you tell her it's from Uncle Paulie. And then he just grabs the cleaning shit out of his hands. Paulie, come here, get the hose. Then this big scene. I remember this scene very well, especially because I think they released it a lot, at least a significant chunk of it, even before the season maybe came out. I remember seeing they dropped the scene online as sort of like a season 5 teaser, or at least big sections of it.
This is the scene at Vesuvio?
Yeah, Vesuvio scene with Tony and Carmela. They do such a great job with comedy. This Artie thing is just gut-bustingly funny to me. Hope you brought your appetites. John Ventimiglia, absolute A+ home run hitter. He's got the best batting average on this show. Just dynamite. Tony sends him away. And Carmela drops the bomb. For going through with the divorce, she's very businesslike. We know Carmela, that she's very nervous, clearly, and she's doing her best to project what she thinks Tony would understand, which is just strength, straightforward. This is business. The sweet niceties we shared in the pool a few weeks ago, that's gone. That's not what you're seeing here. Cold front. My attorney, despite your best efforts, I have an attorney who's going to aggressively pursue equitable share of the marital assets. Our assets, Tony repeats back. I'm moving on, except that I'm moving on with my life. First of all, we're Italian. We don't believe in divorce. We believe in the nuclear family. Would you listen to yourself? I don't need to summarize it line for line, but it builds to this point where Tony this is just Tony at his most. It's hard seeing him become the gangster to Carmela of all people,
Yeah, that is what happens here. Yeah,
he has tried to shield Carmela as best he can from this guy, who she knows is there. But the real telling and awesome line in the scene that he gives is he stands up after this argument about you want it to get ugly.
I think the word that really triggers him. I mean, it's not just this, but the word that really triggers him in this scene is equitable distribution of our assets. You have to realize he actually didn't pop when she said custody of AJ. He actually pops on custody of assets because then he puts the emphasis on our assets.
Yeah.
With that, how fucking dare you tone in his voice, right? Because much like Melfi and with everything else in his life, there's that primal part of him. Oh, so it's fucking money, right? So this is like very triggering for him. I'm not saying that the whole situation's not upsetting. He doesn't want to be divorced from Carmela, of course, but that is kind of what awakens the business side of Tony.
Yeah,
that's what allows him to treat her in this way, like she's another fucking employee in some way.
Yeah, I mean, in some ways, the sass chewing is something he could have given to any of the guys that work for him. Go ahead, Paul.
Well said. I also, and I don't necessarily like the way that he talks to her.
No,
but Carmela is out to lunch in this scene in more ways than one. Sorry to say, because in part what she's doing, like a lot of the characters do, like Meadow will do later with college speak, like most characters do on The Sopranos, is to speak in such a way that doesn't describe or illustrate how one feels, but belies how they actually feel. Gives a false impression of what's actually going on. Carmela is using this removed, detached financial language, an equitable distribution of our assets to keep away from how vulnerable she in fact is. Right. About how Tony is not going to let her get anywhere near this money if he has anything to do with it. And one of the other things that she says, as you said, Chris, trying to project strength, is I have an attorney, which she has for the moment.
Yeah.
So this is all, as you said, Chris, in this window, but Tony calls her bluff, and that's it. The scene's over. He storms out.
It's tough. The most telling line he says to her, and this to me must be where Carmela, because we know from watching the show that there is a guilt she carries for her decision to make a life with Tony, knowing what she knows about him. And you can see on Edie's face, it's very subtle. But Tony says to her, the only reason you have anything is because of my fucking sweat. And you knew every step of the way exactly how it works. He's not wrong. He's vindictive. He's misogynist. He's using intimidation tactics on this woman. But he's also not 100% wrong either. Carmela knows she has a degree of culpability in this arrangement, not more than Tony. She's not the primary offender.
Right.
But
also this... Oh, I'm sorry. Go ahead.
No, but that's just it. She understands that there is a culpability on her. She did know how this worked.
Well, yeah.
Tony's just reminding her.
It's the hypocrisy. And to your point and to Paul's, like, what is she expecting from this conversation? How many times this season has this happened where she's entered into a conversation with Tony, I think in bad faith, and what, you thought he was going to take this well? And what, respond civilly to you here as well with these terms in this place? I'm not saying I agree with Tony, but I just don't know what her expectations are. I'm going to say something similar about Meadow in a later conversation, but it's like, what are you trying to get out of this? And who do you think you're talking to? The explosive language that's used here, and I wrote it down because I just thought this writing was so good. So I'll repeat what you just said, Chris. The only reason you have anything is because of my fucking sweat, and you knew every step of the way exactly how it works. But you walk around that fucking mansion in your $500 shoes and your diamond rings, and you act like butter wouldn't melt in your mouth, and you don't want it to get ugly? Too late, right? Mm-hmm. That part is correct, because Tony, even though I don't think he's being a good man in this scene, and he's, yes, horrible in all the ways that he's horrible, he understands the authenticity and the sincerity of the situation more than she does. He's using language that is authentic to the situation. His reaction is actually correct. Her expectations are not. And I'm not saying Tony's right. I'm
right.
just saying,
Those are two different things.
I'm saying he's the one in the real conversation here.
Yeah. There's no clean way out of this. Sorry, Carmela. It's tough, but
I love what you guys are saying. This is so rich. Could I say one more thing about this scene? This is really and truly the only note that I have written down on this scene. It's Tony and Carmela have lunch. This is where Tony told his family to remember when times were good.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
How hard? I mean, this is brutal, this scene.
Yeah. And I said earlier, remember, cut your mother some slack. He is cutting her zero slack here. Zero. Has no room he's not going to give her an inch. It's tough. This is tough to watch. We're back on the construction site. Finn is talking to this, I'm forgetting, did anyone write her name down, this character? I know they named her, what, Felicia? Yeah, Felicia.
Yeah.
They're talking about relationships. She mentions Tony's always flirting. They're talking about living together versus being married. He takes a prolonged peek at the thong she's wearing. So that's a part of me is just like, I mean, he's a young guy. She's pretty.
I think it's a little more than that. I agree.
But
he's a young guy. Yeah, she's pretty.
But it's also, this is not a guy who's ready to commit into an engagement.
Not a guy who's ready to commit. It is also, he's getting a little taste of this life because I think she's a little side reference to Valentina, right? Mm. This is like a little sly, like, oh yeah, you associate with these guys. These other little girls are hanging around, you know. This is something enticing too. So I think there's that as well. Yeah, but 100%, not a guy ready to commit. And yes, a young man. He's he's in his last year of college, or he's just getting out of college. These guys notoriously have a hard time keeping it in their pants.
Right. And this applause is for whoever on the Sopranos staff decided to hand Joe Ganascoli that fucking fan. Because that is a hilarious sight gag. Just a gigantic man with that little, like, AA battery fucking handheld fan. I lose my shit when I see him. And by the way, for the record, he does look like Joe Perry from Aerosmith. That is not, and that is not out of the woods. I wouldn't be. That's so on. I wouldn't be surprised if that was ad-libbed. That's just so, that's great.
Yes, and I also do like that image of Vito blowing himself with the fan. Mm-hmm. And as long as Joe Ganascoli is not the most exciting actor I've ever seen, but he's got some good moments here.
Ben says he seems like a nice guy, and then ends the scene with, "You dating anybody now?"
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Meadow and Carmela out shopping. They're talking about shirts, and then Carmela tells Meadow that she's going through with the divorce. Meadows expresses surprise. "What are you going to do? You guys seem pretty chummy in the pool that night." He went home with Artie. They helped clean up.
I understand. I don't know why she's still lying to her, but okay. Meadow is also a real snot in this scene too.
Yes. Yeah. No, I actually, no one gives Carmela. This is what's so tough about this season for Carmela. No one gives her a fucking inch on anything. AJ doesn't give her an inch. Meadow can't even extend. Who has sudden sympathy now? It's so funny how I think kids and people, teenagers, college age kids do this. They change over the years very quickly with the wins. She was at her father's throat for season 3. Wouldn't even talk to him for almost an entire year over the whole thing with Noah. And now she has sympathy for the poverty of the Mezzogiorno, but she can't extend a little understanding for her mother as to why she is kind of trapped in the situation.
Yeah. Well, but Chris, there are options in life.
Yeah.
The fuck?
Yeah.
Yeah, what's with using Finn as an example of self-reliance?
Exactly. Yeah.
Yeah. Even Finn got a job working construction. Were you fucking kidding me?
But yeah, it's tough. Carmela can't get an inch from anybody. It's really frustrating. You have options. I have a lawyer. Good scene. And that's certainly more she's being more real with Meadow than she was with Tony. That's for sure. Phil Leotardo shows up. Car's looking good, although the paint is not quite as brilliant, I noticed. I like that they've started calling him Phineas. Why a dentist? Why not just a regular doctor? He saw a thing on shark teeth. this is fun dialogue here, but planted to create a false sense of security for what's going to happen in another scene or two. Once these Jersey tomatoes come in, you can't keep these New York guys away. I don't know if this is the first time we've seen him. I think he's been on screen, but we haven't actually been introduced to Phil's brother, Billy. So Phil is here.
We saw him during the Lorraine Caluso business, I think.
Right. Yeah, he was there with him and Joey Peeps. Yep.
Yeah.
But you guys know my brother, Billy. Yeah. What's going on, Bill? How are you? Then they start talking about Patsy got a Gumar, got his Gumar a necklace. First he gave her the emeralds, then he gave her the pearls. Real highbrow humor here, boys. Then they just start getting into this is macho bullshit, back and forth, kind of making fun of the ugly girls each other's fucked, whatever, over the years. That one girl you fucking had big sideburns, whatever. Then that other chick skank you were with, quote unquote, was like kissing a fireman. And then little Paulie gets back, well, you ought to know, Sweetie, with a lisp. Big mistake in this world. Eugene Pontecorvo sitting there drinking his Snapple, which no longer comes in glass bottles, another sign of the times.
Yeah.
Couldn't do this now. Just kind of absorb. It's really kind of astonishing, but also really realistic in a sense, how much time passes between the remark and the dismissal of the remark and then getting up and doing what he did. It's really something. What'd you say? Sits back, thinks on it for a few more minutes. And then I got to take a piss. Gets up, another character getting up to pee. And here, hold this for me. Whack, fucking bam, breaks it over the eye of little Paulie. And the guys go into hysterics. I knew that was coming. Ha, 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 ha. Rough. And Paulie just goes in on him, or Eugene, rather.
And that's just for a little side comment about a man that they all knew was not gay.
Right.
About maybe engaging in some gay activity, maybe.
Yeah.
That we all knew was a joke.
Yep.
You know, that's the stakes on this.
Correct. Yeah. So while it is horrifying and funny and crazy and awful in its own right, this moment does serve that story that's coming very well, Jordan. Well said. But he beats the fuck out of him, kicks him a bunch of times. They get up. Gene, calm down. Yeah, Gene, relax. You made your point. Oh, okay. Yeah. They tell him to go home. He hasn't been well all day. You know, I'm not going to repeat the phraseology Vito used, but what about him? What? I think I've seen uses the ultimate racial slur and running that way. Again, this imagery of the two black guys being scapegoated for this. They just ran
two guys.
Yeah. Oh yeah, those two guys. Patsy says, right? Unbelievable. Yeah. It's just they keep bringing it back. They're talking over dinner in the next scene. Meadow and Finn. By the way, Meadow, Jesus Christ, it's 90 degrees out. It's the middle of July.
Fucking chili. Yeah.
You made chili. I love chili. It's one of my favorite things to eat.
But yeah, symbolically, yeah, she's making a bad situation worse. She doesn't have any, sense of what's going on with him.
Yeah. He's very clearly hot, uncomfortable. Gene, he's so sweet. Sweet Eugene. We just saw sweet Eugene in action. The shitty AC in the background, just total insanity. And Finn is obviously a little rattled, as any normal person would be seeing that. He's just talking about how they were laughing. It was sick. What about your dad's road rage? I wonder what story he heard about that. That's very funny.
Oh, is that a reference to the strangling Phil Leotardo after he runs him into the truck? Is that what that is?
Maybe. Who the hell knows? That's the thing. It could be any number of things. That's what's
right. There's been a bunch.
Is this what you grew up with? He asked her. And then you have a ex-boyfriend who was shot to death. And even Meadow. I don't know if she's fully bought the lie, but she is, she was right there in season 3 opposing this narrative when Jackie died. And here she is repeating it. African Americans, if you must know, again, these two unidentified black males, that the sins of the Italians.
Not just any Italian. We know who killed Jackie Jr.
Yeah. Vito.
Who pulled the trigger?
Yeah.
I mean,
Yeah. So that's a whole interesting other layer on this is Vito has killed one of Meadow's boyfriends before. Vito, the guy that's going to be threatening Finn, and it's just so good. So many layers. It's really well thought out. She guilts him into eating the chili, and they're going to continue going on. She gives this ridiculous eye-rolling speech about the poverty of the Mezzogiorno, which even if all of that is true, it has little or nothing to do with the spoiled, lazy yuppies sitting at that construction site.
Right. Though this really is such a nice microcosm for Meadow's ignorance. She's a really smart character. She's a smart girl. But I think she has... The line is not joined up together, and I might be misquoting this. I wrote this down, but maybe not exactly. She criticizes Finn for talking about the men at work like they're part of something you would study in an anthropology class. And then we've quoted this now several times this episode, but she says, from the poverty of the Mezzogiorno, where all the higher authority was corrupt, she's speaking about them like they're from a fucking anthropology class. She's doing what she was just condemning. I wonder if Meadow listens to herself at all in this episode in particular.
Well said, Jordan. Meadows college speak, anthropology class speak, like Carmela's recent financial speak, like Tony's therapy speak, like Chris's AA speak, is mostly static. And basically, if it even has a center, it just justifies oneself. In Meadow's case, it justifies her having peace with her family. She's not gonna countenance any of this. She doesn't want to hear about it. I never saw any violence, so it doesn't exist. That's her deal, and that's her reading. And it does seem like she can be talked out of it. She's full of shit. The poverty of the Mezzogiorno thing is, yes, true, but ridiculous. The only imagery that's interesting to me about the Mezzogiorno, what the Mezzogiorno refers to is the south of Italy, both the southern part of the peninsula and the people there, particularly the working class. What Mezzogiorno means literally is midday. The reason that they call it that is because in the middle of the day, middle, giorno, day, in the middle of the day in the south of Italy, the sun is very hot. And we are dealing with heat in this episode. There's a lot of hot stuff going on. It's the dog days of summer. It's the boys of summer in baseball. And emotionally, things are heating up as well. Seemed like an interesting and deliberate choice. Also, at the end of Meadow's little speech here, they do something they don't do a lot in The Sopranos. They dissolve to the next scene. And gangster movies usually don't do that. One gangster movie did, The Godfather, which was the most romantic reading of gangsterism. That's Meadow's reading, the poverty of the Mezzogiorno. But like on The Sopranos, we're going to undercut that romantic reading as time goes on.
Wow, well said, Paul. Jesus Christ. You guys blow my goddamn mind regularly, this shit.
Hey, I'm not blowing nothing.
Guys, I didn't mean to bite your head off.
We're at Joey Pepys' funeral, and I got to say...
This is so funny, Chris.
Listen,
nickname. Family name is Pepperelli.
This is definitely one of the best gags I've ever seen relating to a funeral. The fact that it just says his tombstone says Peeps. And Silvio's reaction to this, we know they're working on it. Fucking Jason. And then his excuse took Jason, he's dyslexic. The fuck's that got to do with it? Oh, man. What an embarrassment for the Jersey crime family that they fucked up that bad. They're the one thing they were doing for this funeral. But yeah, this is a fucking hilarious bit. Very well done. I bet this even got a laugh in the writer's room. That was just so funny.
It's very funny.
Yep.
That was like a big laugh from me rewatching this. It's really good.
Johnny, though, is beside himself. He's glancing over. Little Carmine is there putting on the performance. Johnny is just apoplectic. He's beyond it. And walks off with Tony. Tony approaches him. That two-faced fuck. Brings up this guy, Mickey Farrell, in the Upper West Side. Guess who he saw in the Upper West Side the other night? Your fucking cousin Tony. At which point Tony has to pull Johnny into the car. Come on, let's sit down. And John looks at, little Carmine, I should fucking kill him and his wife and your cousin next. Let's get into the car. This is language we're not used to hearing from Johnny, but he means it. Tony sits him down, and boy, oh boy.
Yeah, this scene is so much with the just the dignity of Johnny Sack. Always on the line.
Yeah.
Always on the line.
Tony tries to play it off like you're going to believe the word of some drunken Irish fucking prick over me. And he kisses he's just beside himself that Carmine would even show up at the funeral. He kisses the kids. Tony suggests going out, shaking his hand, putting it to bed. And he kisses the kid's mother. That's how it works, John. You know that. And Tony telling another person, you know how it works. Johnny says to him, yeah, sure. That's why your cousin's here. At which point Tony, well, first of all, not before we get this. Why did they include this? It's very funny, but this scene between Phil and Sil. How's your daughter? And she's good. Get back into the car. It made me chuckle a little bit. Just the two, the two lieutenants, the two high captains just sitting out there in the rain while their bosses are having this.
I think it's a nice inclusion. I think, because the underlings keep things civil, right. They're just the men they serve are going to tell them what happens next. I mean, what I think is so fascinating about gangster life is like you could really like the guy that you're going to war with, but that's just what's going to happen next, And Sil is there. He's, like you said, top captain. So is Phil for Johnny. They're probably wondering what's going on in that car. That we got to see them seeing it. Are we next? Are we going to be at each other's throats next? Are you the next one on the ground? There's something to that.
Yeah.
This is like, what this reminds me of, that scene? You ever watch the old Tom and Jerry cartoons? And there was one in particular they used to show a lot. Maybe some people know what I'm talking about, even if you two think I'm fucking crazy. But Tom and Jerry, they're chasing each other around the whole fucking episode, as usual, as was, thousands of episodes of Tom and Jerry. And then right before the episode ends, you hear a whistle. And they both drop the act. And they go to their punch cards out by the worker station. And Tom punches out and Jerry punches out. And he says, hey, Thomas, have a good day. I'll see you tomorrow. Same thing. Yeah, Gerald, I'll see you then. Right? As if this is all just like, it's business, Yeah, it's like Phil and Sil might be soon at war, or like their bosses might be feuding in that car. A hit might be getting ordered, but it's just, this is the order of the day. Business as usual. Soldiers.
Jordan, I fucking really love that. Thank you for that. That's Tom and Jerry. That's great. Methods of conflict resolution. We'll see how that goes. This Mickey Farrell, Tony says you haven't been Johnny says he's waiting for his explanation. Tony says you haven't been yourself since the old man died. First you kill Lorraine, then you sink this idiot's boat. It's not the Johnny Sack I knew. And then Tony gets into this story when Johnny doesn't embrace his warmth or take up his pragmatic tone that Tony is used to. And Tony comes up with the story about looking for Kelly. And Johnny, to me, what's funny, what's sad about this is Johnny is too cunning for this. Johnny knows that this is Tony covering for his cousin Tony. He has to. Because this story, while it has an air of viability to it, he did lose his daughter Kelly, and Tony provides just enough details. You can see Johnny just shaking his head. And the subtext behind, I swear to God, Tony, if I find out you're lying, is not that you better not be lying to me, Tony. It's if I find out that you've lied, if I am able to verify this, big trouble. So that's why that look is exchanged when both guys get out of the car. Tony knows that this is big trouble, and he was not able to get John to a place where he felt comfortable that he could necessarily protect Tony from whatever is coming next, depending on how this shakes out.
Yeah, it's also not a very good lie. I mean, anyway,
right.
I mean, I know he pulled it from truth, but it's paper thin.
Yeah, exactly. Yep.
And I kudos to Johnny Sack there. He truly, on his face, you see he doesn't buy it for a fucking second. He basically is like, I know you're lying to me. I'm just going to wait to prove it.
That look at Tony B that they both exchange is very good. Tony B's like, what's up? Am I okay? And Tony gives him nothing. And then we are back to the construction site. The last thing we saw there was that horrific act of violence, and Finn is trying to keep his head down. Hey, 3 out of 4 dentists surveyed is how they and they give him the Ali or Tyson in their prime. I don't know. What do you mean you don't know? It's an opinion. And he says
he could end it early. If Tyson lets it go too long, Ali will move around him, I'd say.
Oh.
If it's under 3 rounds, I'd say Tyson.
Interesting. All right. Well, viewers,
if it's over 3 rounds, I'd say probably Ali. Sorry, that's just me going up there. But
I like that.
Hey, I'm fine. I got no argument. Listeners, if you disagree with Paul, please write us at our social media page and emails. I'd love to hear that for the retrospective. Finn is afraid to say the wrong thing, which Eugene's to see. This kid's all right. And they invite him to sit down. Sit down. Ramus got the good donuts today. I talked to her. Forget about Ramus. I talked to him. We got the good donuts today. He sits down. Like, oh, I barely got any sleep last night. So take a nap. What are you worried about? They're sucking him in here. He's letting his whatever he feels about this morally go away because he is tired. He is worn out. Meadow's cooking chili for him on a 98-degree night. And just wants to relax and take a load off here. Cut to Chris. This is Chris Moltisanti's only seen this episode, but he's complaining about Tony B's promotion, how bullshit it is. And this again, you can take the mob out of this. I felt like this is a very real griping about somebody getting promoted for doing the wrong thing. It happens all the time in workplaces.
It's a great little check-in scene.
Yep. And this asshole went to a shrink. He's always got an agenda, side deals, secret promises. Alls I know is I used to be number one cousin and now I'm being eased aside. So this is something we should keep an eye on. Another thing we should keep an eye on is the second this conversation ends, Adriana's on the phone with Agent San Severino. So this is still ongoing. Can't forget about that. There's no waking up from that nightmare.
I really enjoyed that we get a little bit of San Severino's daughter in that calling scene.
What a cool choice.
It was a cool choice. It gives you just a little bit something more about her and to tell you that, she has a kid. She has a family,
Yep.
San Severino explicitly told Adriana when Adriana asked earlier this season that she doesn't have any kids.
Right.
So it's a big reveal on that end. And also, I don't think we hear any of the conversation except Adriana identifying it's me, but she's about to report that Chris is professionally unhappy, right?
Yeah. And that Tony and potentially Tony B with the casino. Who the hell knows what she's going to tell? But it spells bad.
So
news.
as you said, Chris, it's like it's short, but it's a big forward. It's like, uh-oh.
Yeah.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Well, and it's also a big change because, again, they usually have to track her down. Why don't you go haunt a house or something, right? She's calling them now. That's another thing to take note of. That this is becoming more normalized. This situation she's in, and now that she's perhaps finally accepted, there's no way out of it. She has to work it to the best way that she can. So let's see where that goes.
Mm-hmm.
After the phone call, we get this quick touchdown at the beach, this little bonfire they got going, smoking a little weed. Looks like a nice time. Finn is not going to get much sleep. These other people there have come up with the wonderful plan for their future of going to film school.
Yeah, they love doing that. Any little jab at writers or directors or actors, yeah.
Yeah. And Finn, not even worth going home. Let me just go to the job site now, catch a little sleep before the shift. Sounds reasonable. Shows up there, and boy, I got to tell you, anyone I have ever watched this with the first time, including me when I first watched it, this is a big holy shit moment when you really realize what it is you're seeing. Vito is, ma'am, I don't know how to say this, sucking a security guard's dick. To quote, to paraphrase Ralph Cifaretto.
It's particularly well blocked. There is no way for Finn to play off that he didn't see what he saw.
Yes.
You know what I mean? Like, I don't know if we could have said like, it was a sideways glance. He was just walking past, whatever. Nope. No, I mean, Vito comes up and just fucking locks eyes with Finn, and Finn tries to turn. No, it's no fucking
it's
way.
Done. No, absolutely. It's not like, yeah. He goes up and, I think like the viewer probably thinking, is this guy is he nodding off on drugs? Is he jerking off?
Yeah,
what's going on
guard,
here?
Right, yeah.
Mm-hmm. And then all of a sudden that head pops up and there is eye contact. Vito and Finn lock eyes. It's concrete, and then Finn quickly turns and walks away. Vito sits back up, and you can see like, oh fuck on his face.
Finn DiTrolio, my arch nemesis.
Cornered in the porta potty.
Well, he sees Vito giving the guy head cut to the head. Like,
right. Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, this humor is all over this episode.
They do a good job too of we're trained in look, we just saw what it means to be gay. Even joked about being gay in this universe. So in fact, many universes probably even today, but especially back in 2004 in this hyper quote unquote masculine culture of the mob. So they do a nice job of lingering on him peeing just a little too long. You feel claustrophobic in there, like something bad is going to happen. What the hell is this? And he turns and walks out, and there he is, just staring him down. This is one of those things, they both know what happened. They're not going to address it. Vito just is going to let it hang there and let it power this conversation. Plays a little game with him. I never got your last name. DiTrolio, my arch nemesis. You came in so early this morning, and he seems like he's feeling him out. Then makes him say his name. What's up, Vito? Not much, Finn. Except I got 2 tickets for you to see your boys take a shellacking by the Yanks tonight. 2 Yankee
Chris,
tickets.
I don't think I wouldn't even finish the conversation. I'd already been running away.
Running?
I'd be running away from the construction site. You wouldn't find me.
You would get a plane ticket with abundant intentionality, is what you're telling me.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, this is bad stuff. This is really, I love the position it puts Finn in, because it's like, do you go? Do you not? I mean, it's Yankee Stadium. What can he believably do to you at a baseball field in front of thousands of people? But at the same time, what does it say to go? And then what does it say to not go? I did feel for Finn here, and I did think Meadow was being unreasonable about the suitcase, which we'll get to in a moment. But
she was, but yeah, we'll get there.
It's bat night. And
it's
come
bat
on now.
night.
And I don't like to miss the national anthem. Warns him about that. Patriotic young fellow, Mr. Vito Spatafor. Don't use that all shuck shit with me. You're fucking going. Tells him flat out.
Well, then he says, I'll see you under the bat tonight.
Yeah.
7 sharp.
7 sharp.
That's right before that national anthem.
Then we go back to the apartment, and this is really the first part of the big fight they have here. He got out a suitcase. He's nervous. He doesn't like the guy. I had to go through, have any idea what the strings my father had to pull to get you that job? I'm going to hear so much bullshit. I just don't like the guy. He tells Meadow and comes clean. I saw him blowing the security guard, and I'm genuinely afraid of this guy. Vito Spatafor is a married man. Please, Meadow, what the hell? She's very naive here, I think.
I didn't think we were going to get more clueless than the anthropology line in the same episode, but lo and behold, here we are. Vito Spatafor is a married man, Finn. I seriously doubt he wants to kill you. What are you, fucking kidding? You're Tony Soprano's daughter. And as Paul already mentioned, Vito Spatafor killed your last boyfriend. Granted, you don't know that, but come on. You know what these guys do, what they're capable of. Who cares if they're married or not? What does that have to do with anything?
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, Elton John was married. He likes girls, right?
This is all about you. Is that all you can say when it has anything to do with my feelings? That he brought up. Is that why you got out the suitcase? He's explaining it was just my process. I was just thinking out loud, thinking of leaving.
She's very, very annoying in this scene. Both parts of it. Yeah.
This is about you not wanting to commit, which it's just tough. He has to respond to that. He gives this line that kills me. I quote it all the time. There was no abundant intentionality in my getting out the suitcase. She talks about, I could leave too, I can go up with Hunter in Canada. She talks about she mentions she mentions the French guy in Montreal. And he's like, yeah, you don't think you mention him every 5 seconds at a minimum? He's going to be an oral surgeon. You would have had a new friend if you weren't so obnoxious. They're going back and forth. I don't need to hash the whole thing out, but I really love when he says, I'll put it back. Okay. Finn must have, and this is not all Meadow. He is wishy-washy. He could have done a better job communicating all of this to her. But
of course,
she is really immature here, and she's young. She's a college student. It's okay that she's immature, but it's hard, and I do feel for Finn here. There's no winning this argument, quote unquote. This is one of those situations that he's in. You can't unring the bell, and once Meadow decides that the suitcase is a sticking point for her, that's it. She's on that suitcase.
I find it really amusing, actually. Our crossover fans will know, if people like Mad Men, a top episode of Mad Men is called The Suitcase, and the theme is the same. It's the suitcase is an image that means you're ready. It's just not done with this kind of playfulness. It's a different show, and these characters, the supporting characters on Mad Men aren't fools. The supporting characters on The Sopranos are fools. So they present in a different way. And this is very funny. It is annoying. It's annoyingly real, as Jordan pointed out earlier, the way these young couples have these competitions. And the way it plays out, I guess it's sad in a way. An engagement, the beginning of a marriage, much like the other storyline, conceivably the end of a marriage, is done with all these mixed signals and a lack of communication.
Yeah.
Well said. I actually, despite the fact that he's a murderer, despite the fact that he's a sociopath, I actually wrote, oh, poor Vito.
No.
You got...
No, not poor Vito. Fuck this guy.
You don't feel a little bad for him standing out there waiting for Finn to show up?
No, because what's he going to do to this kid? He's just trying to intimidate him and be sexually fucking weird. No.
He's all there in his Yankee stuff. He looks so happy and excited. I don't know.
Oh, come on. He got you. He got you, Chris.
He's got a little hat on. Come on. Anyway, he goes in. He once he starts hearing the national anthem, he's got to go back inside. But it's a nice little thing. They use a very, I will call out Sopranos rarely for something bad. They use a very obvious stock shot of the city here, getting back into the, Lily pointed out, like, that was a really obvious stock shot of New York City. But they go back in with the establishing shot, and then they're arguing. They're been up late. Meadow's face is tear streamed. Her eyes are bugged out. Finn is at the edge of the bed, like looking like he wants to rip his own hair out.
Yeah, it's like 4 a.m. at that point, and no young person fight that goes that long can end up anywhere good.
And yeah, exactly. And Paul said it well. This is annoying, but annoyingly real. They're going through this. It's a I was having, how are we going to evolve to the next phase of this relationship? Arguments with my girlfriend at the time, as we were both finishing up college, because our lives were, and that's ultimately why we broke up, is our lives were just going in such vastly different directions. We were trying to hash that out. So they're talking about this transition period forced on us by external events. It's difficult choices. Are we happy for choices? Thank God for choices. He's trying so hard here. It's real simple. Are we going to stay together or not? And again, this is where Finn loses, because the only way to at least somewhat dim this would be for him to say, absolutely, yes, we're staying together. I love you. Or, no, I don't think this is going to work out. Make a damn decision. Instead, he says, yes, if that's what you want.
Yeah, if you want. What the fuck? That's not an answer.
Yeah, that's a terrible answer to give in this situation. That's not what I asked you. Then he brings up, then they're talking about, like, why tonight of all nights, the suitcase. And then Meadow realizes he's not answering. She goes over, he's fucking fallen asleep. Poor guy. Are you asleep? How can you be asleep when we're in the middle of this? In the middle of what? I just wrote LOL at this point. I was laughing. You're like you should quit the law center. You're like a prosecutor at 4 a.m. The suitcase. We come back to that damn suitcase. You didn't even ask her. You didn't ask me to come. You just got out the suitcase. Jesus Christ.
Jesus Christ.
Exactly. Yes. And she runs sobbing into the bathroom. He kicks the air conditioner. It finally This is the first time any of these scenes in their apartment are quiet because just and it fucking dies down. Please stop crying, he says as she's sobbing in the bathroom. That's you got fellas out there. That's the one thing you can learn from Finn. If your girlfriend, fiance, wife is locked in the bathroom sobbing, just walk up and say, "Please stop crying." That's gonna do it.
Yeah, there you go. That'll work. How about this? If you get into a real bad fight with your girlfriend, just get married to her at the end.
Well, and I think it's meant to produce that reaction a little bit in the audience when she finally comes out and says, "Let's just get married." And it's just like, oh my God, that is the last thing you should be doing at this point. He's just looking for a way to end the fight.
Yeah.
That's it. He's just looking. I don't know. All I know is I can't think. And I feel it's something I feel very strongly. And then we get out of there. Whew. Anything else about this before I move on?
No, I would just say that he certainly doubles down on his decision-making power. I mean, rather than just saying, let's stay together, he says, let's get fucking married. Why don't we just get engaged then? It's a terrible decision. And
we were asking him the whole time to make a decision. And this is the one
I know.
He
overcompensated. You know,
that ring, it does something. That's what Felicia said.
Yeah. That ring has like a secret power or something. Yep. This next scene, you gotta fucking feel for Carmela. Just you can see her stomach sink. Talk about the color drain from your face. She gets a call from the lawyer. The forensic accountant didn't want to do it, so he called another one. When he heard who your husband was, he didn't want to pursue it. And then Carmela says, "So what? You don't want the case?" And he's gives we have another example of a bullshit lie here that is very well. As my partner's reminded me, I do have a full caseload. Or hang up doesn't even want to hear it. Throws perfectly good groceries on the ground. Can't say I blame her, but you just really feel her frustration here. This is tough. How do you deal with this? She has no way out of this.
No, well, and that's what Tony has made her feel. You know, the walls are closing in. You have no recourse. You have no one to turn to.
It's either stay married or take a really, really bad deal in whatever divorce happens, and he'll make it as rough as possible on everybody in the process. Cut to this next Melfi scene, and as you said earlier, this is a really, really good, well-acted scene between these two. It's probably the best scene in Melfi's office since Tony was trying to woo her at the beginning of the season, and the best actual therapy scene maybe since season 4. Tony is talking about the depression just washed over him. I was doing so good. He was playing golf. He had another panic attack. I thought I had this shit beat. First, he tries to lie that he was overcome with emotion about, I must have been overcome with emotion. Even Melfi knows that's bullshit about Joey, the passing of Joey Peeps. I wish you told me. Well, I wish you cured it. I hate when Tony puts this shit on her. I really do. It always drives me nuts.
Yeah. Well, he always oversimplifies the process of what he thinks therapy should be, but I think he knows better. He says things to hurt on purpose,
Yep. He gets into it with the house, his maid crying about her cousin who was killed or something or died. And then his cousin Tony was borrowing tools at the house. That's when the next panic attack happened. And then the golf course, my cousin entered into that too. So Melfi elicits the fact that this has to do with cousin and that the cousin is a recurring theme. And I worry about him. He hurt his foot, and Melfi doesn't understand it first. He's a grown man. Is he at risk of losing the foot? It's not his foot. Fuck the foot. Forget about the foot. I worry about him. He's just out of prison. And as Tony is telling this great Gandolfini acting here, you can see it affecting him. He doesn't want to go there. I mean, on one hand, you have to applaud the fact that this might be one of the most significant breakthroughs for Tony in Melfi's presence. And the idea of him having a panic attack with Melfi right there is just really interesting on its face. I'm glad we got to see this happen. Melfi's response, very good. Focus on your breathing. Are you having a panic attack now? Tony lies. Oh, no, it's just some gas. Well, that all happens after his very racist rant about why he missed the job that sent Steve Buscemi away. He was jumped by 2 black guys, again, with this theme that the episode is titled after. It's not the word he used, but that's what it was.
Do you guys remember the end of season 2? Tony thought the stress dreams and all the food poisoning was from Indian food, and Melfi said that the racist rant about Indian food was a distraction. And here she knows him really well. When he says the thing about jigaboos and starts to get into this angry racist tirade, she says, "Okay, forget that." Yeah. Just moves him right off of it.
Yep. Correct. Yeah, she knows. I love that callback to season 2, Paul. He lost his wife, his daughter. Perhaps if you come clean with him, he had a huge lunch. It's just gas. And then he finally gets to the root of it. And we finally, as the viewer, get to understand the truth behind what happened with the Tony B situation and why this guilt and shame haunts over Tony. And it's less to do with guilt about his cousin and more to do with his own shame about feeling like a pussy for passing out after a fight with his mother. And the actual words that come out of his mouth, it takes a long time for him to get there because we're witnessing this wonderful panic attack acting. Tony's having a hard time. Melfi's trying to guide him with it. But the gist of the story is that Carmela showed up late to Livia's house, and she was supposed to bring yarn for Livia to make booties for Meadow. And Livia was just going on, and Tony said, fuck it, and left, had a panic attack, and cut his head open. And that's why he missed the job all those years back. Black guys, my ass. Forget that for now. Once again, she says, forget that for now. What am I supposed to tell them? What am I supposed to tell all of them? That I had a fight with my mother and I fainted? Turns out I'm just a robot to my own pussy-ass weakness. And she points out, you also said he's very capable. But Tony doesn't want to go there just yet again, but finally, just this release, you just feel this release. This is so well acted. I anyone who's had anxiety attacks can attest to this. This is really fucking great, solid work by both of these two actors, and something new in Melfi's office. Really something we haven't seen before. Tony in active crisis.
Yeah.
In a way that isn't violent or threatening to Melfi. We have seen that. But sometimes what happens in here is like taking a shit. Great line. Props to the writers for that one. Okay, I prefer to think of it more like childbirth. Trust me, it's like taking a shit. Even in this moment, Tony has to reject the feminine interpretation and put on the masculine thing. Any thoughts on this excellent scene?
Well, actually, you just kind of said what my big takeaway was there at the end. I think actually what I like about this scene is that there's actually not much to interpret. He actually says it in his words.
Yeah.
And
very rare honesty here in this office.
It's very clear, and he doesn't obfuscate. He brings I should say she brings him forward into this revelation. But I thought the button on the scene is actually really interesting because she compares the process to childbirth. He compares it to taking a shit. I think it's, the duality there is terrific. I actually was reminded again of the first image of the first episode. Is that the magic of this place? Is this the magic of the goddess of woman, right? That she brings you to this point of birthing, of inspiration, regardless of what your sex, gender, identity, whatever, that you will create something. And, is that something more realization? There is something to that. In many ways, and I so love when we get a rich Melfi scene like this. It's just you see a little bit of her power and you're like, oh, fuck. If this guy only let himself really be moved by her in the way she's been trying to move him, what an amazing life he could have. What amazing knowledge. It's actually sad to me that it's so long between breakthroughs for this man.
Very well said. Yes, I feel similarly, I guess, a conflicted feeling about it's such a great scene. Both actors, terrific work, and it's powerful. It's there's something to be proud of here that Tony said it and he got there, and there is a breakthrough here, and it's not easy. However, then the scene tags the way that it does. The reason that I chose the quote that I did, sometimes what happens in here is like taking a shit, has been articulated by you two guys. That's the way Tony reads it. Melfi's gentle pushback on it about childbirth is great, and I think it's certainly the way that I would prefer Tony think about therapy, that I would think about my own therapy, because defecation and childbirth are both awkward, painful. There's a bearing down, but childbirth, born in pain and blood, also brings new life and a special kind of joy. Whereas the way Tony sees therapy, i.e., taking a shit, are that these shameful secrets need to be excreted in a safe place. And that's the wrong approach. That's the hyper-masculine approach. That's also, of course, the way that Vito has been trained to look at his homosexuality. And it's how these guys get stuck in the way that they do.
Yeah.
Flush it down the tubes. Waste management.
Yeah.
Very good. The button on the episode, you gotta just the emotion that she's able to give in this scene. Edie Falco, despite a lot of great scenes this season, this is probably my favorite acting from Edie Falco in the whole episode. When she comes home after this experience, sees Tony's car in the driveway, just looks at him out there on the pool, splashing water on his belly, marking again the bear marking his territory, and just the way she just shuts her eyes and just is the fucking audacity of him to just be there in her space. And she goes upstairs, is going up to bed, and gets the call. Mom, I'm engaged. What? Are you sure? She's just as stunned by this. Came right out of the blue. She's going to finish dental school. Being a good mom there, any mom would ask that. Yeah, we're both going to get married after we get our degrees. He's using his graduation present to buy me a ring. That's so sweet, she says in tears, looking out toward the window. Oh my God, I'm going to cry. I know. And then hearkening back to, it's hard not to laugh at this use of this song in this show, because those of you who know Chris Moltisanti's rendition of If I Were a Carpenter.
From back in No Show.
And you were a douchebag. However, despite that chuckle, Edie was making me feel all kinds of things. Joy for her daughter who has options, and a man who won't be, well, he may be a bit of a indecisive, spineless kind of guy. He's at least not going to be vindictive, abusive, and violent to Meadow. It's the sadness of her own marriage dissolving, this joy for Meadow, all combined in with just her heartbreak and her feelings of powerlessness. Edie does it all with just these 30 seconds. It's so good. And then the episode closes out. Final thoughts on this and on Unidentified Black Males.
Yeah, I titled our episode "Better Left Unspoken," which of course refers to what is often said about the truth. Sopranoland is a world of lies. These characters are liars. Everyone lies in it. They live in a lie world, a lie reality. And I think one of the most interesting things about this episode, of course, is that this is very much an episode about the truth. Another famous saying about the truth is that the truth will out, but then also the truth will set you free? ? I don't know. I think if your lie world is the world you live in, if your world is made of lies, the truth can be poisonous. I was looking back on the revelations of this episode, right? We have, I guess our biggest revelation is the truth about what happened in the past, about why Tony B got arrested and how it is really more directly Tony S's fault, but in an embarrassing way that would be hard to have other people deal with. We have the revelation that Vito is gay, and we also have the revelation that Tony Blundetto, we knew killed Joey Peeps, but now that is kind of out there in the world. The truth is harmful to these characters. The truth is something that is hard for them to deal with. I am not sure that living in Soprano world that the truth is something good anymore. I think once you're this far down, you kind of just have to keep going. I don't know what saves these characters is what I'm trying to say. We have the clever scapegoating here. It is sort of funny and tragic. We scapegoat the quote unquote unidentified black males. It makes me think of sort of just how impotent that is, because, it's like you can't deal with your own consequences in any way, because you can't be accountable in lie world. You literally can't be. You may get killed for it. I don't know that I have much more to say that's more significant than that. I just thought like, wow, I'm so proud for Tony for making this breakthrough. It's not going to be any good for him, right? Oh, this revelation that Vito is gay, it can only hurt somebody. I know for a fact that Tony Blundetto killed Joey Peeps. Let me try to protect him. You can't. Just better smother the truth as best you can. There's just no holding the truth on any kind of a pedestal in this show. That's really it.
Well said. Yes, I think in the lie world, everything is so fraught, and as we were talking about, so much that is communicated is more actually what the characters want to hide, or at least are trying to hide. I don't have much to add, except that this episode is called Unidentified Black Males, which very clearly refers to the scapegoat of those two guys, the young black men as the scapegoat for both the gangsters' crimes and even their vulnerability. Tony, when in fact it was his mother, of all people, who got the cut on his head. She made him pass out. There's also black males is 2 words. There's also blackmail, 1 word. And I think there's examples in this episode of blackmail only not so called. It's not identified as blackmail. Tony emotionally blackmailing himself because of his guilt over Tony B going to prison. Finn, in effect, blackmailing himself into proposing to Meadow. Like, hey, you want the protections and the benefits of this connection and not the danger? Put a ring on it and you got yourself a deal. Maybe this is just a different way of saying what Jordan just articulated, that this is a dangerous world in which these deals have to be made. There's no other way. Anyway, it just redounds to great drama, a terrific episode, dangerous and funny. I loved it.
Yeah. Dangerous, funny, well articulated, masterfully written, as always, with these 2 guys. And Patterson crushed it, knocked it out of the park. Another great outing in season 5. Just another hour in Sopranoland. Look, we're late in the series, and the major dramatic question, I suppose, from minute 1 of the show, once we find out what the premise is can this guy be helped? What can this situation be salvaged? And I will say this without spoiling anything about what's coming, because The Sopranos will always be, if nothing else, unpredictable. But the outcast at this point in the show is bleak. That there is any salvaging any of this. Like you said, you just gotta, to use the shit metaphors from season 5, you just gotta flush and hope it disappears, because that's all you're gonna get. But anyway, I loved it. Great episode, and I'm looking forward to the next one, Cold Cuts. It's a great episode for some, more Tony B, some more Chris Moltisanti, and a very, very fun excursion with some other characters that it's a good one. Cold Cuts is a good one, and the last bit of normalcy before things go completely off the rails. So
I can't wait.
Cold Cuts is great. I'm Chris D'Amato.
I'm Paul Mancini.
And I'm Jordan Hugh.
And we will see you next time for Cold Cuts.